Day number 15 for the Karen Reed trial is now in the bag, and it ended off in the middle of cross-examination of Jennifer McCabe. So today there was just one witness, Jennifer McCabe, and as you all will recall, on Friday, the direct examination concluded for Jennifer McCabe, and now picking it up on Tuesday was the cross-examination began, and it did not finish today. So it's going to continue tomorrow, again, with the cross-examination of Jennifer McCabe, and the cross-examination is being done by none other than Alan Jackson. So before we jump into the actual analysis of what happened today and some of the good points, some of the strong points that were brought out, I just want to give a few quick disclaimers. Number one, as I've said in this case, and like I say in all the cases that I analyze, I don't have an opinion on this case. Definitely not yet. Until I see all the evidence presented, all of the testimony, I'm not going to have an opinion on this case. I think that's the only honest way to look at these cases, to be objective and to not just follow news reports and to believe what people are reporting. I like to make my determinations on what I see brought out in open court. That's how I make my personal determinations. So I don't have an opinion on this case, not yet. And the fact that I may point out certain performance that I thought was good by either side, whether it's the prosecutor or the defense attorney, or if I have certain questions that I have based on some of the testimony that came out. That doesn't mean that I'm siding with either side. That just means this is me as an attorney watching this case and telling you the questions that I would have if I'm watching this case, or if I was experiencing this case as a juror, or if I'm sitting there at counsel table. These are certain questions that I would have, or certain things that I would want to button up if I was on one side or the other side, or certainly questions that I want to answer later on coming up in the trial. So that's when I'm bringing them up, and also what type of arguments can be made based on some of these questions or thoughts that I have. So just because I have thoughts or just because I have comments about someone's performance, again, doesn't mean that I'm taking any specific side. I'm just giving you my analysis as a trial attorney has from my experience. All right. Now, before we jump into today's specific cross-examination by Alan Jackson, I want to point out one other thing, and that is that I have a special place in my heart for sarcasm. The people that know me that I'm a little bit sarcastic, and I appreciate some snark. That's what some of my friend attorneys has referred to some of my my approach and some of my writings and how I argue sometimes, is that I won't just specifically argue the law, and if I have a witness on the stand, I'm not just going to ask certain questions. I'm also just going to be a little sarcastic. And therefore, I appreciate when I see other attorneys also using a little sarcasm. You have to be careful with it in front of a jury, certainly, because you don't want the jury to think that you're just filled with sarcasm and trying to turn everything into sarcasm. But I think in a certain way, it can help the jury to really appreciate what's going on here and why you're having so much trouble with a witness, or if a witness takes a certain position which is not a good position, or it's not reasonable. So then I think just a quick sarcastic comment or a quick snarky comment can really just help the jury understand what's going on here. And of course, you have to be careful with it, but that's something that I noticed that Alan Jackson also does, which is why I personally appreciated what his demeanor and how he was conducting the cross-examination. Now, again, it doesn't mean that I'm taking his side or anything like that. I'm just appreciating his approach, his style, and his performance. All right, so now let's jump into actually what came out in the cross-examination for Jennifer McCabe. So, number one, the first part that he wanted to bring out was that she would agree that there was no tension between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed at the Waterfall. This has been consistent with everyone's testimony, that everything seemed completely fine when they were out at C.F. McCarthy's and the Waterfall. Now, there was some also other testimony that Jennifer McCabe actually was talking to Karen Reed and took her by the arm at the end of the night when they were leaving and said, "You're coming with me," meaning I want you to come home, come to Brian and Nicole Albert's house to continue this party. I guess they're having a good time, and there's been some evidence that that's what she said. That's what Jennifer McCabe said to Karen Reed, "You're coming with me." Now, of course, it was more friendly, but it was a little more forceful than just a, "Hey, why don't you come with me? I can give you a ride." It was much more forceful. And what Alan Jackson was trying to paint a picture of, that actually Jennifer McCabe wanted to separate Karen Reed from John O'Keefe. And why would you want to separate them if you don't have any ill intentions of what you want to do with John O'Keefe? So that's kind of what he was trying to do with this cross-examination. And he tried to bring out with her, he said, "You didn't say you're coming with me." And she denied that. She says, no, I never said that. I said, why don't you come with me? Which is much more friendly. And she explained that, no, it wasn't like anything nefarious. I just was offering her a ride home. Wasn't this whole big conspiracy. I just wanted to offer my good friend who were having a good time, wanted to offer her a ride home. All right. Now, she also testified that when she was looking out of the house, out of the window, out of the door, and Matt McCabe also testified to this, that she did see Brian Higgins' Jeep with the plow attached to the front of that Jeep by the mailbox. So remember, we already know exactly the layout from 34 Fairview. There's a mailbox all the way near the end of the driveway, and then going the entire length of the house, there's just the curb there. And there's been some testimony that they didn't see, there's no Jeep there at all. Right? That was the testimony from Julie Nagel's brother and Heather Maxim and his other friend who was in the car. So their testimony was that there was no Jeep in front of their F-150. So there was no separation between his F-150 and Karen Reed's SUV. However, according to Matt McCabe, there was this Brian Higgins Jeep that was parked between the SUV and the F-150. And Jennifer McCabe also testified to that as well. Now, something that Alan Jackson brought out was that, hold on a second, you're telling that to all of us now in open court, in trial, but you never mentioned that to Trooper Proctor. When Trooper Proctor was taking your interview on January 29th, you didn't tell him that Brian Higgins' car was by the mailbox, did you? And in fact, he put in his report that Jennifer McCabe saw Karen's SUV parked right by that mailbox, where she's saying Brian Higgins' car is now. That's what he put in his report that you said. So what was her response to that? He must have misunderstood. That's not what I meant to say. When I looked out of the house, if you draw a straight line from the door to where I was looking, that is where I was looking, and that's where Karen Reed's SUV was, certainly not by the mailbox, which is not right opposite the door to Brian and Nicole's house. Now, something else that Alan Jackson wanted to bring out is that Jennifer McCabe has had extensive conversations with her friends and family about this case. So he asked her, he said, you would agree with me that you had many conversations with your friends and family about this case. And her response to that was the following: of course, I speak to them all the time about the vicious harassment we are all receiving. And what was Alan Jackson's response to that? That wasn't my question. And this is something that he does so well. And I appreciate it because this is something that's so important. And some attorneys can not appreciate exactly what he's doing. You've got to, number one, control the witness. So when the witness is trying to inject their version of events and they're trying to give you what they think happened, and they're not answering your questions, and they want to say a certain story over. So even though your question is about one thing, they want to give explanations for something else, and they want to get some sympathy. So this is a perfect example. He's saying, did you speak to your family members about this case? And she responds, oh, of course, about the vicious harassment. No, that wasn't my question. Okay, I know you want to talk about vicious harassment, and maybe just say it 5 times now quickly so that you can get it out of your system and the jury can hear it from you. That wasn't my question. Now concentrate on my question. Now, he didn't say this, but this was the idea. This was the tone. That wasn't my question. My question was, did you speak to your family about this case? And then she eventually agreed that yes, that she has had extensive conversations with her friends and family about this case. And of course, she explains it because our good friend was just murdered, and we're all trying to figure out what happened. Okay, so again, trying to explain that, yeah, it's not like we're up to anything nefarious. It's just that we're trying to figure out everything that's going on. Now, remember there was some testimony about the Life 360 app. This is Allie McCabe's app that she has on her phone so that her parents can know where she is at certain times. Now, her testimony was, and Colin Albert's testimony also, was that she picked up Colin Albert around 12 a.m.-ish, around that time, from Brian and Nicole's house, and she took him home, and then she went home herself. She dropped him off, and went straight home, essentially. Now, the app, Life 360, which tracks her movement, was continuing to track her and didn't seem that she was at the house. It some point she was at the school, and then said that she was traveling 12 or 20 miles, whatever it was. And the app, according to the app, shows that her location was all over the place and that she was traveling up until 1:30 in the morning. But her testimony was that no, she went straight back to her home and went to sleep must be around 12:30ish. So he brought out this point with Jennifer McCabe. She said, you're familiar with Life 360 app. And she even said that it's a good parenting tool. And what he tried to do here is he tried to get her to say and acknowledge that the app is accurate. And she didn't actually say those words, and it came back a little bit to bite him because she eventually said, no, I never said that. And he pulled out the testimony that she gave in the front of the grand jury, I believe it was, and it didn't end up saying, she didn't actually say that it was accurate. What she said is that it acts like a GPS, and it does track a child where they are. And they said it's a good parenting tool. So again, she did say that it tracks them, but she didn't say that it was an accurate where they specifically are at a specific time. So she didn't give it that stamp of approval. Now, she also acknowledged, something else. She says that she didn't check the app that night where Allie McCabe told her that she got home at a certain time and that she picked up Colin and drove her home. She didn't double check to make sure that Allie was telling her the truth. She just believed her daughter that she actually did pick up Colin, dropped him off, and then went home herself and went to sleep. So that part, Alan Jackson did get her to say that she didn't double check with the app to make sure that she was actually, Allie was being truthful. Now, when Jennifer McCabe was called to the scene, right, when she eventually got to the scene, I should say, she did say that she burst into the bedroom of Brian and Nicole. Remember, this was a point here that Matt McCabe said that she's so calm under pressure. And even in crisis mode, she's very calm, which is why that phone call, that 911 call, she seems very calm. So if she's so calm, and she seemed calm, by the way, as she was, if you look at that dash cam video of her walking up to Brian and Nicole's house when she was sent inside by Sergeant Lang to wake them up, she seemed to be walking in calmly, but her testimony was that she was actually not so calm, and she burst into the bedroom of Brian and Nicole, and she agrees that she was hysterical, she was loud, and it was chaotic. Those were her words in describing her conduct. And even with all that hysteria, she doesn't remember Chloe, the dog, which Brian and Nicole said sleeps with them in their room. She doesn't remember any sort of reaction from Chloe, the dog. And she doesn't remember even seeing the dog. So a very big question mark there. Where in the world is that dog, and why is the dog not reacting to this burst into their house at 5 o'clock in the morning? So, all right. Moving on, there were some questions about exactly when she looked out of the house to see Karen Reed's SUV, exactly how long the SUV was there before. Okay, it was a little bit technical, but she did say that as soon as she saw the SUV, she texted John O'Keefe, "Are you here? Come pull in behind me in the driveway." She kept texting him, but he never responded. Now also, something that he brought out again is that she never mentioned the fact that this Jeep, Brian Higgins' Jeep, was in front of the house. She never mentioned that in her grand jury testimony. And she also said in the federal grand jury testimony that every time that she texted, she got up and looked outside at the SUV. Every time she texted John O'Keefe that night, which would be somewhere around 5 times, where she got up, texted him, and looked outside. Which means that she also looked outside when the SUV wasn't there anymore. And she testified that every time that she looked outside, she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. And she also testified that she didn't hear screaming. She didn't hear squealing tires. She didn't see anything out of the ordinary or hear anything out of the ordinary in front of Brian and Nicole's house that night from all the times that she was texting John O'Keefe Where are you? Come inside. Where are you? Come pull behind me. All the things that she was texting him. And she kept saying she had a clear, good view of the SUV. She kept saying that. And this is something that also Alan Jackson kept playing out. So you had a clear, good view of the SUV. Yes, I had a clear, good view. Even though you were standing by the window. Yes, I was standing by the window, or I was standing by the door. I had a clear, good view of the SUV. And he said, so where's the body? If you were looking and you even looked in that area when the SUV was gone, where was John O'Keefe's body? And she said, yeah, but I didn't say that I was looking at the ground. So she's saying that she was looking straight ahead, but she was not looking at the ground. And this was a funny moment because Alan Jackson said to her back, she said, you're focusing right now on my face, right? Do you think that you'd see, I don't know, an alligator if it was sitting in front of us, even though you're looking at my face? And she actually said that she does see the table in front of her between herself and Mr. Alan Jackson. So she did kind of acknowledge that she does see other things besides on what she's exactly focusing on now. And he said, yeah, because you have a big you have a field of vision, right? And not just what exactly you're focusing on, you can also see other things in your peripheral vision. This is the point that we brought out earlier. And then he said again, you never saw that body in your clear and good view of the SUV or when the SUV left. In that clear and good view, you never saw the body. And she said, no, I wish I had. And we keep hearing this, I wish I had. I wish he, remember when some of the other testimony, there was, did he come into the house? No, I wish he would have. There's all this, I wish he would have. I wish I'd done. I wish this and wish the other thing. And Alan Jackson stopped when she said, no, I wish I had, meaning seen the body. He said, sounds like that's a little rehearsed, doesn't it? And this is, again, just like a little bit of a sarcasm, a little bit of snark, which I personally appreciate. Maybe some other people don't, but that's a little bit more my style. All right. Then also, remember she left, she got into the SUV. And again, at around 2 o'clock in the morning, when she was leaving Brian and Nicole Albert's home, going home with Matt McCabe, she gets into the passenger seat. And again, she doesn't see anything out of the ordinary when she was outside. And then she said, well, I wasn't looking. And again, his question was, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary, right? And her answer was, I wasn't looking. So he responded, okay, I know that is the answer that you want to give to every question. My question was, did you see anything out of the ordinary? And then she had to say, no, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. All right. And then she said that she turned right away to talk to the girls in the background and in the back seat. And to this, Alan Jackson's response was, or his next question was, you mean you made sure that you didn't look out the window as you were driving away, right? And his answer was, no, that's not it at all. I was just happening to be talking to them. Not because I was trying to not look in a certain direction on the lawn because maybe there's going to be a 6'2" body there. All right. Then remember, we had testimony from Julie Nagel. And Julie Nagel said that she saw, Julie Nagel was in the car with Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, it was Sarah Levinson and Julie Nagel. And Julie Nagel said that she saw a black object. And she even said that in the car, that she thinks she saw a black object, which the next day she says was about 5 or 6 feet. And when she hears that it was a dead person, then she was able to put 2 and 2 together. We spoke about that. But she said that in the car. That's what her testimony was. But Matt McCabe said he never heard that. And now Jennifer McCabe also says that she never heard that. So did Julie Nagel say that or not? Jennifer McCabe and Matt McCabe did not hear her say that. All right, then what did she do when she got home? She texted her sisters, and she texted her husband and a friend who were together in a group chat. All right, then when she came over to the O'Keefe home in the morning, right, when she was woken up by Karen, and Karen was screaming at Jen, Jen, and then Jen came to John O'Keefe's home, and they wanted to go to the home even though Karen was just coming from the home. They looked around, and she noticed that John O'Keefe's bed, was made. So his bedroom was fine. It was immaculate. It was untouched, which means that he was obviously not sleeping in the bed. And Alan Jackson said, you're aware that Karen Reed slept on the couch that night awaiting for John to come home, meaning she didn't go home because she didn't go into the bed because she was waiting for John to come home. So she figured, okay, I'll just hang out on the couch until he comes home. When he comes home, I'll wake up and we'll go together to bed. That was what Alan Jackson was suggesting here. And she was saying, you're aware of that, right? That Karen slept on the couch, which is why the bed was made. And if you looked on the couch, you saw the couch had a blanket on the cover where she was sleeping. All right. Well, she said, no, I was not aware of that. And she said, I looked her, maybe quickly by the couch. All right. Then there was the comment. The comment that all of a sudden changed when Karen Reed was talking to the EMT. So throughout the entire conversations that she had with Jennifer McCabe, this is Karen Reed with Jennifer McCabe, she kept saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? What if I hit him? Asking all these questions. Maybe I hit him. All of these comments she was making when in her moments of hysteria when she was with Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts. And then finally, in front of the EMT is talking to Karen Reed, and all of a sudden she has a moment of reflection where she can honestly say with 100% certainty, yes, I hit him. And then right away, right after that, completely go back to her hysterical state that she was in. Now that was the testimony, right? So Alan Jackson had a great line with this specific testimony that Jennifer McCabe gave. And he said, you reviewed your state grand jury testimony before testifying today, right? And she said, yes. And he said, isn't it interesting that you never told the grand jury that Karen Reed said and admitted and confessed that she hit him? Isn't that interesting that you didn't tell that to the grand jury, but all of a sudden you're telling that to us in trial today? And she says, well, can you show me? And what they did was, which was actually very smart, they had select pages from the grand jury testimony of the transcript showing 12 different times when Karen was asked, when Jennifer was asked, what was Karen telling you during this entire period of time? At the scene or on the way to the scene? And she never said that. And in fact, they actually have a quote from her saying that Karen Reed told, this is again Jennifer testifying in the grand jury proceedings, that Karen Reed asked to the EMTs, maybe I hit him, or did I hit him, or could I have hit him? And not that she actually confessed and admitted to the EMT that she did hit him. So that was actually Jennifer McCabe's testimony in the grand jury proceeding. And now all of a sudden it's changing. That's what her testimony is. All right. Now, on the 911 call, she said that John got out of the car. And Alan Jackson brought out, says, well, hold on a second. This is your 911 call at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? You didn't speak to Brian Albert. You didn't speak to Nicole Albert yet. You were just the only person that you spoke to officially at that time was maybe Karen Reed or Carrie Roberts. And all Karen Reed was saying was she was hysterical, right? So how did you know that John got out of the car? You know nothing. So how do you know he got out of the car? And that's what you said in the 911 call. So that was something that he brought out. But Jennifer McCabe responded, well, Karen Reed told me that he got out of the car. I got to remember, Karen Reed, her state was she was completely hysterical and screaming, and basically just screaming the entire time, Jen, or Carrie. And did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And she's just being completely hysterical like that. So number one, did she actually say that John got out of the car? It's not so clear. And even if she did say that, she's in an hysterical state. Who knows what she remembers or not? Okay, so maybe we're reading too much into a 911 call. That can be argued, and maybe that's just what she thought. Maybe that's just what Jennifer McCabe thought, that John got out of the car. I don't know. She just made that up herself. All right. Now it gets a little more interesting as well. There's some phone records which show a phone call between Jennifer McCabe and Nicole Albert at 6:07 a.m. and 6:08 a.m. And the extraction reports show that Nicole Albert answered those phone calls for a few seconds. At 6:07, she answered the phone call for a few seconds, and at 6:08, she answered the phone call for a few seconds. That's what the reports say. At least this is what came out in testimony. And she claims, Jennifer McCabe swears that Nicole Albert did not answer those phone calls at all. Didn't go to voicemail, that she did not answer those phone calls. Now, she called Brian Albert at 6:23 in the morning, and that call wasn't answered. And that's actually what the extraction report also shows, that it was not answered. And here's where it gets even more interesting, that the phone calls to Nicole were deleted before the phone was turned over to law enforcement. Why were you deleting those phone calls? And she responded a few things. Number one, she said, well, those weren't the only calls that were deleted. There were some other phone calls that were also deleted. There's like 20 of them, so you're just picking out 2. And she also testified that she did not delete those phone calls. They were not deleted by her. That was her testimony. Well, then who deleted them? That's the question. I don't know. She also testified that Brian, this is another question, this is another cute moment, that Alan Jackson said, Brian Albert did not come out of the house, right? And her answer to this was, neither did any neighbors. No neighbors came out of their house that night. And then his response was, again, some snark and some sarcasm. I know you'd like to continue editorializing after the fact. There's probably a time and place for it. This isn't it. If you can answer my question, I'd ask that you do that. So again, just controlling the witness, showing the jury that the witness is just trying to say over a story and, help her side out. And she's just not answering my questions. So, but I appreciate the snark anyway, as you know. All right. So continuing on. Is she friendly with Sergeant Michael Lenk? Yes, she is friendly with Sergeant Michael Lenk. She knows Officer Sean Good, who also reported to the scene, but she wouldn't call herself friends. And again, this is Jennifer McCabe. She's friends with Michael Lenk, but not with Sean Good. And there was a question that he asked at some point, which may have backfired a little bit, because he was trying to make a point by saying, you wouldn't tell us if you deleted those phone calls, right? I mean, if you really did delete those phone calls, would you tell us? Like, you wouldn't tell us, right? That's why you're deleting it, because you don't want it to come out. And to this, she actually answered the right answer. She said, no, I would tell you because I'm an honest and truthful person. So that kind of backfired against Alan Jackson. All right. And then he says, at some point later, another Albert came to the home, right? That morning when Jennifer McCabe came back to Brian and Nicole Albert's home. So he said that another Albert came to that home, right? And she says, yeah, Kevin Albert came. And he said, how do you know I'm talking about Kevin? So this is, again, like another moment. And then she said, well, I knew you were talking about them because they said that he came to the home later when she was not there. So she found out from a different source. All right. Now, another interesting part that came out from Alan Jackson during cross-examination was that Jennifer McCabe told Trooper Michael Proctor about the taillight. And in Proctor's report, he writes that Jennifer McCabe said that the taillight was cracked. I'm sorry. He wrote that you saw a crack in it. And she's saying that no. And remember that picture that they put up this picture showing many pieces of that light missing. You wouldn't say that there's a crack in the taillight when half of the taillight is missing, right? So the question is, what did she actually tell Trooper Michael Proctor? And in his report, he writes that Jennifer McCabe told him that she saw a crack in it. And her testimony is, no, I didn't see a crack in it. I saw that it was cracked. And saying that the taillight was cracked, this is not just a question of semantics. It actually can mean two very different things. Whether the actual main taillight is still there and just there's a little crack in it, or some pieces of the taillight are missing. And that would make more sense if you were saying that the taillight was cracked. So this was another point that was brought out. And she said, I don't know what Trooper Michael Proctor wrote. All I can tell you is what I told him. And I know that I told him not that I saw a crack in it, but that it was cracked. So that was another mistake that Michael Proctor made in his report. So there was already a number of mistakes that we're pointing out that Trooper Michael Proctor made in his report. Now, there is some phone records that he showed Jennifer McCabe on the stand, which shows these are phone records from John O'Keefe, and John O'Keefe's phone. And on those records, it shows that there was a call from Jennifer McCabe to him at 12:29 in the morning. And on your phone records, Jennifer McCabe, it doesn't show that phone call. There's another phone call that you deleted, and somehow it was not on the extraction report either. So also that was another point they brought out, that she's trying to delete some of the phone calls that she made. Then there was some back and forth about Carrie Roberts and her interview with the police. And by the way, we're supposed to hear from Carrie Roberts tomorrow on her testimony, so we'll see where that goes. But there was a group text between Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe. And included in that group chat was also Jennifer McCabe. So you have Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert all in the same text group. And there was a text that says the following: Carrie is here, from you, Jennifer McCabe. Carrie is here going over timeline. And this is on February 1st. Well, doesn't that seem like you're trying to corroborate and collude with each other and figure out your timelines? And she did an interview in your house, right? And she eventually agreed that, yes, Carrie Roberts did do an interview in her house. And the fact that they were going over the timeline, she just says, we're all trying to figure out what happened. We're not trying to conspire to do anything. We're just trying to figure out what happened. So we're all trying to, go through our own timelines, trying to figure out what happened to John O'Keefe. Now, I don't know how going through their own timelines is going to help find John O'Keefe, because everybody, they know they were all at the Waterfall, and then John O'Keefe wasn't there. When they left the Waterfall, nobody saw John O'Keefe again. So that's very simple. Did anybody see John O'Keefe after he left the Waterfall? No. What do you have to go through? What do you have to go over timelines for? All right. But that, nevertheless, Jennifer McCabe said that, no, Carrie, they're just going over the timelines because everyone's just trying to figure out what happened here. And then she texts something to this group when Carrie Roberts is being interviewed. And there was some question about which interview was this. There was two different interviews. One was on the phone. One was in person. Seems like it went back and forth about this. But at one point, she texts the group the following. In all caps, she is telling him everything. And 2 exclamation marks. This is what she texts. Jennifer McCabe texts to their group. Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, and Jennifer McCabe. What was it that you put in all caps? She is telling him everything with 2 exclamation marks. What exactly did you hear? And number one, you see that you're actually eavesdropping and listening in on this interview, which is inappropriate, right? Carrie Roberts is giving an interview with the police, and you're eavesdropping, and you're reporting back to your group. That looks like you're trying to keep each other notified of what's going on. Why? And her response to this was that Carrie is a very blunt person, and she was shocked, and Jennifer was shocked. Jennifer McCabe was just so shocked and horrified by something that Carrie was saying about the relationship between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. And that's how she was just shocked and horrified. And we know that Karen Reed did confide somewhat in Jennifer McCabe about certain issues that they had in the relationship, like whether she's spoiling the kids or not. So what exactly, and this didn't come out, he didn't ask the question, which is probably smart, but what exactly do you think it was that was just so horrifying to Jennifer McCabe to hear that what Carrie was saying to the police about their relationship? Like, what exactly could it possibly be that she was so horrified and shocked by? But we don't know. We don't know the answer to that question. Maybe we'll hear when Carrie's on the stand. Now, in June 2023, which was interesting, this was the federal grand jury proceeding. In June 2023, she said that she couldn't remember why she sent that text message, that she is telling him everything. That text message that she sent to the group. So in June 2023, she didn't know. She had no recollection. She couldn't figure it out. And she said, I have no idea. And now, all of a sudden in trial for Karen Reed, all of a sudden you remember what prompted you to send that text in all caps. She is telling him everything to that group chat. And she was trying to explain this. And she said, well, I'm sure it happens to everyone. You know, you forget something and then you're like, oh my God. And that's what it was. And Alan Jackson's response was, well, I'm not sure that happens to everyone. And, you know, again, just that sarcasm and snark, which I appreciate. All right. So then we have a text from Matt McCabe. And this is when they were officially in the kitchen and they were eating dinner with their family, and then they're about to go to a basketball game. And Matt McCabe texted the group, and this is when he was overhearing Carrie Roberts give an interview in the next room over to the police, to a trooper. So Matt McCabe texts the group about Carrie Roberts being interviewed, and he said, this girl could write a book, ... nonstop. Meaning that Carrie is just going on and on and on and on. And here was again where Alan Jackson was bringing out, so you could hear what was going on in that interview, couldn't you? You were eavesdropping. You were listening with Matt McCabe. You and your husband, even though you were in the kitchen eating dinner, you were listening. And that's how Matt would know to say she is telling this girl could write a book. And then she writes back, this is Jennifer McCabe in that text exchange, this group text. She wrote back, I love it. And she tried to explain this away, Jennifer McCabe. She tried to explain away. It says, well, we couldn't really hear exactly what was going on. We just heard voices. So we heard Carrie's voice. So that's really all that we heard. We didn't really hear exactly really words or sentences. But then she texts after that she is telling them everything. This is what Jennifer McCabe texts. And Nicole Albert responds, good. And here again, where she's trying to fight back, Jennifer McCabe is trying to fight back with Alan Jackson that she really wasn't listening. And she eventually says, well, of course you're going to hear bits and pieces. So now he's saying, oh, so now your testimony is evolving. First you said all you heard was voices. And now you're saying that, no, you actually did hear bits and pieces. And she was explaining this, and she was saying, again, Jennifer McCabe, she was explaining this, and she was saying, well, she was going on and on and on and on and on, like she does. And Alan Jackson responded, and you were listening on and on and on and on, like you do. So I just appreciate it. I enjoyed that. Anyway, so moving on. She says again, and this is just to continue the sarcasm at the end of the day, after she agrees that she did hear some bits and pieces, Jennifer McCabe says to Alan Jackson that I'm telling you facts and truth. And this story that you're creating is not the truth. And his response was, did I create, I hit him, or did you? And then she said, no, that's a fact. And he said, a fact that you conveniently didn't mention to Officer Link or Trooper Proctor or to the grand jury? And then she said, well, it's still a fact. I mentioned it, and there are some reports that say that I mentioned it. So again, just some back and forth, and I think some good stuff. All right. And then at the end of that text exchange with this group chat, Nicole says she doesn't want to text about this anymore, and we'll get more info tomorrow. We'll get more info tomorrow. And this was on January 29th. They're all texting, and then she says, let's not text about it. We'll get more info tomorrow. Now, what happens, coincidentally, on January 30th? Well, before that, he tries to explain, Alan Jackson tries to get her to explain, what's the problem with texting? Why can't you text about this? You didn't do anything wrong. What's the problem with texting about this? And her response was, well, we wanted to keep it secret between just us. And our kids get to our phones. That's essentially what she was saying, that, well, maybe our kids will get to the phones and they'll see the text messages. not the greatest answer, and I think it was a good point that Alan Jackson brought out. Now, what happened the next day on January 30th? Coincidentally, this is something that Alan Jackson, again, brought out, which is just a great point, that on January 30th, it just so happens to be that Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts took a trip to Sergeant Michael Lank's house. And why was that? Officially, the reason was because Carrie wanted to drop off her daughter. They were friends with Michael Lank's daughter. And her story was that even though the records show that she stayed by that house for about 45 minutes to an hour, what happened was that Sergeant Michael Lank's wife came out of the house, sat in the car for about 45 minutes to an hour to talk to Carrie and calm her down. And that's the whole purpose of that trip. Now, isn't it interesting, Alan Jackson brought out, that he was never given this information? Nobody ever told us this information until the extraction on your phones, which put you at that place at Sergeant Michael Lank's house for 45 minutes to an hour. Nobody gave us this information. You never mentioned it before. And then she had a meeting. This is Jennifer McCabe. She had a meeting at the DA's office when she was what he called confronted. And the judge actually at some point said you can't use that language, but nobody caught it at this point. Earlier on in the testimony, he said something about confronted. You're confronted with this information, and the judge didn't like that. So the judge said he has to rephrase. But here he said that you were confronted with this information. Nobody picked up on it, so it went through. And that you were at Michael Lank's house the next day, right? And you didn't tell anybody about this. So when you were confronted with this at the DA's office, what was your reaction then? And she said, well, my reaction was, oh my God, I was there. And I just forgot to tell everybody about it. And then his answer was, well, what was the his question? Alan Jackson's question was, well, what was the follow-up question after this bombshell that, oh my gosh, you forgot to tell everybody about your 45 minutes to an hour stay by Sergeant Michael Lank's house the next day after the murder? And she said no, there was no follow-up question, which again is just so strange how there can be no follow-up question to that. What did you discuss there? Did Michael Lank come out to the house? Did you have any interaction with him at all? What did his wife say? No follow-up question at all. Just, oh, you were there? Okay, fine, good. I'm glad that you know that now. It just seems strange. Now, another thing that he brought out in cross-examination. So we have 2 oh my gosh moments so far. Now, another part that Alan Jackson brought out was that, oh, do you also remember stopping at 34 Fairview before going to Michael Lank's house? So the phone records put you at Michael Lank's house for 45 minutes to an hour on January 30th, and you're there for 45 minutes to an hour, and on the way, you stop off at 34 Fairview. Were you picking up Nicole Albert? Because that's how she's going to find out more information tomorrow? And she says, no, she did not. Jennifer McCabe says, no, I did not pick up Nicole Albert. So he says, so what are you doing by 34 Fairview? And she said, well, that's just the way that we get to Sergeant Michael Lank's house. That just happens to be the natural cut through or shortcut or just regular way that you drive to Sergeant Michael Lank's house. Just so happens to be another coincidence. And then he said, you're sure you just drove by? You didn't stop at all? And she said, no. And he says, and if the report would show, meaning the phone extractions, if that report would show that you did stop, would you have another oh my gosh moment? So again, like another just sarcasm, and she actually responded. She says, no, it's not going to be an oh my gosh moment. We did not pick up Nicole Albert. She's like, maybe we slowed down, but we didn't stop at 34 Fairview. And then he said, did anybody go with you to Sergeant Michael Lank's house? She said, no. Now, he ended off the day with, again, between 12:29 and 12:50, there's a number of phone calls that you deleted from your phone. And he said, what do you do? Let me just ask you, what do you do when you lose your phone? What's like the normal thing to do when you lose your phone? Call it, right? You ask someone to call it. And that's what she answered. She says, yeah, I would call it. Or ask somebody else, right? Call my phone. And you keep calling the phone until you find your phone, right? You run around the house and try to find out where your phone is by calling it. Well, 1229 to 1250, there was 7 phone calls that you made to John O'Keefe's phone that were deleted from your phone. And isn't it interesting that at that exact moment, those exact minutes between 1229 and 1250 is the exact time frame that the Commonwealth believes that John O'Keefe lost his life? Isn't that really a coincidence? And that question was objected to, but everybody heard it. And it was a very strong point, and that's how the day ended. So very, very strong. And also, she tried to explain a little bit before this, she tried to explain that in a different hearing, she explained that they were probably butt dials. So again, we're having some more butt dials going on in this case than we've ever heard before. We have Brian and Nicole Alberts, Brian's pocket dials or butt dials to Brian Higgins, either during an intimate moment or not, which it calls and hangs up. And now we have 7 different phone calls, which she said in a different hearing that they were butt dials, which means that not only was the butt dial to that phone, but also it hung up. So that's 14, what he called 14 interactions with this phone in just 19 minutes, which were all just happened to be butt dials. And that's what she herself suggested is the explanation behind those phone calls, which again is very, very suspect. So this is how the day ended with, isn't it interesting that was the exact time frame which the Commonwealth believes that John O'Keefe died? And those are the times that you were trying to call John, trying to figure out where his phone is maybe. So that was a great way to end the day on cross-examination today. And we will continue tomorrow to see how the cross-examination picks up. So that will be it for today, for day 15. Looking forward to tomorrow. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, and we will see you next time.